Hello everybody, I am Jarrett Ross, a Genie Vlogger, and welcome back to another Professional Genealogist Reacts. On today's video, I will be reacting to how I found the lady in an antique photo without a name by Forgotten Lines. Now this is a new channel that I guess started fairly recently, or at least they only have a few videos, but I've been getting recommended some of their videos lately and they seem to have been getting some traction because they are very interesting and they're much more on the genealogy side than the DNA side of things. I'm especially interested to see these because I had done some videos about similar types of work, but instead of in photos, I was using videos. So I did one video about identifying people that were in a 1911 film, and I did another video about identifying people in, I believe it was a 1903 Ellis Island film. So when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's all about the most minute details, but let's just jump into what they've got to say about this project of theirs.
Have you ever found a picture like this in an antique shop and wondered who that person was or maybe whatever happened to him? Well, me too. So let's find out. I'm James from Forgotten Lines, and I found this picture inside an antique shop just outside of Nashville. I wanted to see if I could figure out who this girl was and whatever happened to her. I've been a genealogist now for over 10 years, and I thought maybe I could use some of the tricks I've learned over the years to figure out who she is. And I did. Now, typically, I like to find 2 or more clues on a picture before I feel confident that I'll be able to figure out who the person is. At first glance, this picture only has 1, the name and the location of the photo studio, Blair, Wisconsin, known for its annual cheese festival.
That's a pretty good hint in all honesty. And I do have to say nowadays, as technology is advancing and a photo like that, facial recognition wouldn't be a bad option to go with that as well. Especially with the recent rollout of Ancestry's facial recognition tool. I forgot exactly what they're calling it. Still not the most reliable, a lot of work that they've got to put into it, but that is a possible way of just plugging that photo in and seeing does anything pop up, because that's a pretty clear photo.
And flipping it over on the back doesn't really help because there's nothing there. No words, no time, no date, no anything. And when I open it up, just to double check, nothing.
Yeah.
So where can we go from here?
One thing that some genealogists will do is they will cut that photo out of the, I guess that's not necessarily a frame, I don't know what you'd call that, a booklet sort of thing, but like cutting the actual photo out of it and seeing is there anything written on the back of that. Especially because whatever that photography studio was doing in terms of organizing their photos and stuff, maybe they were doing something where they were marking stuff on the back and maybe it'll have initials or a name or something like that.
If we look just a little bit closer, right here on the front, there's a tiny little icon.
Class of 42.
So this is her senior photo. Most likely a high school photo by the looks of her. Now we have a town and a very specific year. Our chances of figuring out who she is just went way up.
100%. If I was doing this research, I would be pulling up the high schools for Blair, Wisconsin, and seeing what yearbooks are there for 1942. Because more than likely, if this is her senior photo, well, that's going to be the same photo, or at least a photo from that same photo shoot that's going to be in her yearbook.
But it turned out to be not quite that easy. I went over to classmates.com, which is a website that has a lot of school yearbooks and photos posted online from schools all across the country. Usually you can find what you're looking for there, but not this time. The oldest annual they had for this school, for Blair, Wisconsin High, was 1949. And remember, we needed 42. So not quite good enough.
Now, I usually don't go to Classmates first. I usually actually check Ancestry. And with Ancestry, I won't just do like a general search. You can actually go and get the specific record sets to search through. So for this research, I'd be pulling up a record set that I believe they call something like U.S. school yearbooks from one year to another. It's like a real big year gap. I want to say it's like somewhere in the 1800s to like 2009 or something. I'll put it on screen. But I feel like in my own experience, I usually find more yearbooks on Ancestry's database than Classmates. But comment down below. Let me know what you think. Do you use Classmates more than Ancestry? Do you use something else? And actually, if you're from another country, I'd be really interested to also hear what's the deal with yearbooks and stuff in your locations, because I'm guessing that's something that'll vary by whatever location that you live in.
So I called the Historical Society in Blair, Wisconsin, because a lot of times those folks will have access to certain records that aren't online, oftentimes being yearbooks of the local high schools. They didn't have one either. The oldest that they had went back to 1949. Not quite good enough. We needed 42. So next I called the high school, Blair, Wisconsin High School. I asked the lovely lady who answered the phone if they happened to have any school yearbooks in the office that went back farther than the 50s. This is not an unusual thing for me to do. I will not hesitate to call a school or a library or historical society to see if somebody has what I'm looking for.
I personally hate calling. I usually send emails, especially just because when you do an email, it kind of gives a lot of information at once and they can kind of understand things better. Granted, when you're calling, especially something like a historical society or library, whatever, you kind of get someone right away as opposed to an email, which can take a while. But one thing that I would be doing at this point, like before contacting them, I would actually be going on Facebook and looking up Blair, Wisconsin Facebook groups. Because one thing that you can find are all of these historical Facebook groups, either around the history of a town or sometimes just, I grew up in this town, and a whole bunch of people from that town reminiscing about the old days when they grew up. So I would not only go to there to say, hey, does anyone here have a 1942 yearbook for this high school? But even more, posting the photo and just saying, you know, found this photo, this is the details. Does anyone know who she is? And for all you know, you might actually get like her in the group, or it might be one of her kids or one of her grandkids. It's like, that's grandma.
In this case, they didn't have it either. The oldest yearbook they had in the office went back to 1945. A little bit closer, but still not good enough. So that was another dead end. But I still had one more hope. The local library. So I called the local library, and the wonderful librarian answers, and she asked what she can do for me. And I said, well, I'm looking for a yearbook for the Blair, Wisconsin High School from 1942. And she said, hold on, I'll go look. She comes back, and wouldn't you know it, she had a 1942 yearbook. So at this point, I was pretty sure we were good to go. I asked her to send me the picture of all the seniors from that year, and she was very happy to do so. And within 10 minutes, I had in my email the graduating class of 1942 Blair, Wisconsin. Population, 856. And here's the picture. The graduating class of Blair, Wisconsin in 1942. And look who's there. Jean Skogstad.
Okay.
We've got a match. Now we've got a name for this lovely lady. Her name was Jean Skogstad. So with this information, we can now tell a little bit more about her. So very briefly, I looked her up, and I didn't go very far with her because she only recently passed away, so I didn't want to dig too much into her life. But I did find out that she was born in 1925, which you could basically do the math on of 17-year-old minus 1942. You're going to end up with around 1925. So we already kind of knew when she was born.
I mean, a lot of the process that he's doing for this is exactly the process as I would do it, just slightly different about which one to go through first. But that's kind of the genealogy mentality as well. I guess kind of you could say a research mentality of, if you don't find it here, okay, where else can we go? What else could we do that we could find this? So if the library hadn't had it, he could have tried, you know, like what I was talking about, where maybe there's Facebook groups out there or something like that. Small town, look up all the people you could find that were females born in the town within a year range that makes sense. So kind of like he's saying, you know, senior 1942, well, 17, 18 years before that. So you'd be looking at 1924, 1925, 1926 maybe for the birth. So every female that's living in Blair, Wisconsin in 1940 census, let's say, that would be the next step. And that's a much longer step. But, you know, there's always ways to keep going for a lot of these projects. And a lot of times with brick walls, it's just a limitation on what's available, and what you may be looking for may still be out there. It's just a matter of it's not actually available for you, which is why it's so great. So much stuff is getting digitized and put up online and easily accessible nowadays. Because back in the day, this type of research was way more difficult.
But when I found her obituary, I noticed that her name had changed spellings. It went from Skogstad to Skorstad. One little letter. So I was a little bit concerned that I had found the wrong person, or at least traveled down the wrong path. But her obituary said that she graduated high school in 1944. Our picture says 1942. So which one is it? Well, I called the library back, of course, and I asked the wonderful librarian there to send me a picture of the graduating class of 1944. And she did, immediately. I wanted to check to make sure that there wasn't another Gene Skogstad or Gene Skarstad or anything like that throwing me off. I don't know how likely it is for two girls to be named virtually the exact same thing, 2 years apart, with a name that unique in such a small town, but you never know. So I had to turn that rock over and look. And no, there's no Gene Skogstad in 1944. But look, here's John Skarstad. Spoiler, he ends up being Gene's husband.
Okay, that is a really, really cool coincidence, just in the sense that the two people at the same school with similar surnames that are very odd. Granted, we're talking Wisconsin, which had a lot of people coming from Scandinavian countries, and a name like Skogstad or Skorstad definitely sounds some sort of Scandinavian, if not Scandinavian, at least some sort of Germanic sort of language or something. But also a good spot to point out that with obituaries, this goes to show that you can't always trust all of the information in them, especially because if there's information in that obituary from the kids of that person and they have things wrong, well, then the obituary is going to be wrong. And in my experience, a lot of people really don't know the full stories of their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, and there's a lot of stuff that they get wrong. Even in my own family, things that I've been told that when I started doing genealogy research, it's like, oh, I see where they kind of got that mixed up, but really it's not like this, it's this. So, not uncommon thing to happen.
Making sure there isn't a second Gene Skogstad. Someone jumped out at me. This fellow. We'll come back to him in a minute. So, here's where we are with this picture. Her name is Jean. She was a high school senior in 1942. She lived a very long life with her beloved husband, John, and they passed away somewhat recently, leaving behind several kids and even more grandchildren. And that's good enough for me. I don't necessarily need to know anything else about her. My curiosity is satisfied, and I feel better knowing that she is far from forgotten.
Now, my curiosity would not be satisfied because I would be reaching out to her kids and grandkids. And I think he mentioned something a little bit before. I think I paused right around that spot, so I might not have gotten the full thing. But I think he was saying that he wasn't really comfortable reaching it. He just left it because the parents died recently and all that. But, that's where I think, Facebook or email and stuff like that, that's the perfect place to kind of just send a very quick brief like, hey, I do this kind of work. Here's an image of the photo I found. I was able to identify that it's Jean. And from what I've found, I believe that you're her child or grandchild or whatever. So I just wanted to share this with you, and then send it to them. And then if they get in touch, great. If they don't, whatever. But that's where I would want to go through it. But there's a few more minutes to this video, so maybe there's something else that he does.
But wait. Let's take a closer look.
Wait.
At John's graduating class of 1944. Remember this kid in this snazzy uniform?
Yep, you mentioned him 5 seconds ago.
1944 ring a bell? We entered the European theater of World War II just months after this picture was taken. And of course, I wanted to see if he made it back. So I searched his name and had an answer a few minutes later. Merlin Anderson, 82nd Airborne Division, 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment, Company H. I'm going to read this to you. Blair Boyd dies in England. Private Merlin Anderson, paratrooper, wounded in Belgium campaign. Among the thousands of American lives paid to push the Nazis out of the Bulge on the Western Front was that of Private Merlin B. Anderson, who received wounds there January 1st, which resulted in his death in an English hospital January 19th. The initial notification from the War Department came to his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Martin Anderson, Monday afternoon. Merlin received a broken leg in action on the Belgian front January 1st and was evacuated to the English hospital. His parents and friends had received letters from him there telling of his wounds but had no knowledge of the seriousness of them. He wrote that the doctors were very good and that he was getting along fine and hoped to be sent back to the States soon to a hospital near home for convalescence. So the message announcing his death came as a great shock to his family and friends.
That's sad.
Merlin was born near Taylor in Jackson County, November 3rd, 1923, the eldest son of Mr. and Mrs. Martin Anderson. He was baptized at the Beaver Creek Lutheran Church and confirmed by the late Reverend T.E. Swager at the Zion Lutheran Church. He attended the local school where he was active in sports, receiving 2 letters in basketball. He was graduated with the class of 1944, his mother receiving his diploma at the graduation exercises as Merlin was already in the Army. He was inducted December 13, 1943, and received his basic training at Camp Walters, Texas. Choosing the paratroop branch of service, he was trained for that work at Fort Benning, Georgia, and went overseas in July 1944 after a short furlough at home. He took part in the invasion of France and was wounded in action in Holland September 21st, for which he was awarded the Purple Heart. Following a short time in hospitals in Holland and France, he returned to duty and took part in the fight against the enemy in the German breakthrough, there receiving the wounds which caused his untimely death. Besides his parents, he is survived by a brother Lyle, a junior in the local high school, and a little sister Fern Marie. An uncle, Private First Class Richard D. Heride, is stationed in the Hawaiian Islands. February 8th, 1945. So I have no doubt that the girl in the photo I found knew the boy who would die only a year later. She would live well into her 90s, and he never made it past 21. Jean left a legacy behind with a swarm of descendants. Merlin Anderson would die young, and his memory would have been kept by his parents, siblings, and friends. And it makes me wonder if Jean and her husband John ever thought about Merlin over the next 70 years after they went to high school together. But either way, now we have.
Okay, that was a great video. Rare video amongst the many that I react to where it's actually genealogy and not just a DNA test admixture. So hopefully a pleasant surprise for many of you, or something a lot of you enjoy. The research process that he undertook to figure this out definitely wasn't the exact way that I would have taken, but similar as I've mentioned, but still a great example of what you can do to solve mysteries that may not be as difficult to solve as some people think. I mean, in all honesty, he contacted, 4 or 5 places before he pretty much had the answer, and some projects, it can take way longer to do that. But I'm hoping I get a good reaction to this video from everybody, because I definitely want to do more reactions to these videos, because I really do enjoy these kind of videos way more than watching people talk about their admixture percentages, and especially just misunderstanding them. And if you enjoyed this reaction, you'd like to see more just like it, be sure to click this video right here. Thank you to my Patreon patrons and YouTube members.